Welcome to Around the Weird. Here's your host, the museum curator of the strange and unusual, Mr. Nothing.
Thank you, mysterious voice, and welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I've found in my travels. Today it is Poetry Thursday, a fun day to talk about some of the interesting and zany poetry that I've stumbled across, including some poetry that is based on Greek mythology. Today's poem is Persephone's First Season in Hell by Alison Stone. For those who don't know, Alison Stone is a poet, a writer, and also a psychotherapist, which is interesting. She has written a number of books of poetry and has won an award for her work. She often focuses on magic, mythology, the strange, the out of the ordinary type stuff based on some of the poems from her that I've encountered, which you see in the poem that I'm talking about today because it's based upon Greek mythology. I don't know too much else about her beyond the fact that she is also a psychotherapist, which is funny. Like in between writing deep, meaningful poetry that might be about herself, she also helps people explore themselves. Probably recommending they write poetry in the process, but I can't say for sure. And that's pretty much all I know about her. So without further ado, let's talk about this poem. I will read it, do a little bit of an analysis, and we will move on from there. Persephone's First Season in Hell. That winter I learned what the animals know. My hair thickened. My blood grew cold and slow. As the flowers had fallen from my apron, so joy and memory spilled from the sack of my skin. I drew down into the cave of myself and lived off my fat. Now that food was safe, the damage already done, I would not eat. The chewed heart of pomegranate blocked my throat. My mother's tears watered my roof. All that I had cherished went on above my head. Armored in loneliness, I learned to love no one. The dead scurried about while my heart slept, red seethed beneath its tree of bone. I played cards with the murdered, but left when the talk turned to autopsy scars. My marriage lengthened and coiled. I learned to quicken my husband's pleasure and to melt the memory of his touch with my tears. Above the black wall of my world, the sun drifted in its ring of fire. With half the journey done, it sent a signal down. The ground above me split. Like a child in the womb, I felt the tingle beneath the fingernails that marks the end of death. And so that was Persephone's First Season in Hell. In terms of analysis, there's quite a bit to discuss in this poem. I feel like there's something worth chewing on in each verse. But let's focus on the larger narrative of this poem, talking about a woman named Persephone who seems unhappy in her relationship, regretful of her actions, and ultimately thinking of her mother and the world above. In order to understand this narrative, you do have to understand a little bit about Greek mythology. I think a lot of people know about the myth of Persephone, but for those who don't know, Persephone was a character in Greek mythology. Her mother was Demeter. She controlled the seasons. One day, Zeus was like, "Hey, I like that Persephone lady. Let's get her down here into hell." And she went to hell. She was told that if she ate any food, she'd be stuck there forever, and she ended up eating some pomegranate. And when she tried to escape, Hades, sorry if I said Zeus, but Hades was like, "Yeah, we're gonna keep you here forever. Those are the rules." And the Greek gods ordained that, it was kind of unfair, but they decided that she had to remain on Earth or in Hades for about half of the year, and the other half she could be with her mother. And that's about how we got the origin of winter, because Demeter was sad half of the year being without her daughter, which is a very interesting myth. It's something that I read as a young lad, and has always kind of stuck with me about how sad it was. But that's the narrative, that's the background of this poem. It's what happens afterwards, what's going through Persephone's mind. Kind of a very feminist poem, taken from the perspective of a woman who is in an unhappy relationship and dealing with increased amounts of loneliness, isolation, and what appears to be depression. She says, "That winter I learned what the animals know. My hair thickened, my blood grew cold and slow." And she, like, the flowers fall off her apron, and it just the tears kind of stain her skin. She's not in a good place at all. She's thinking about the memory of eating the pomegranate, and it's turned her off eating food entirely, which is really sad. She thinks about her mother, who's also crying. And she thinks about the dead who she's saddled about. And it's like the dead are there to keep her company, but she doesn't have anything in common with the dead. Because in verse 4 she says, "I played cards with the murdered, but left when the talk turned to autopsy scars." Because Persephone isn't dead. Like, she's sort of a guest in hell, brought about by Zeus, or not Zeus, but Hades, who wants her there. I keep saying Hades, the god of the underworld, something like that. But Hades wants her to be there, and so she's there as a human, or a demigoddess, and she doesn't really have anything in common because she doesn't like Hades, and she's just satisfying him as quickly as possible to get things over with, and she doesn't have anything in common with the dead, so she's just kind of there. There is some hope in this poem in the last verse, because she thinks about the world above, and how she only has to be there for half a year. She says, "Like a child in the womb, I felt this tingle beneath the fingernails that marks the end of death." Like, for her, 6 months out of the year, it feels like she's dead. Like, she's among dead people. She has nothing in common with her husband. So, it's a very lonely and isolating kind of place for her. But the other 6 months, she has to look forward to. But I still say that's a very sad existence, because if you're living for a long time, and you're only happy 6 months out of the year, that means you're also, dreadfully sad the other 6 months of the year. So a lot's going on for Persephone in this poem, and I do like how it sort of builds upon that woman who's unhappy in a relationship and can't seem to get out of it, and the only thing she has to look forward to are the moments where she's not stuck in this relationship. This poem really stuck out to me, and I really like how it adapts Greek mythology to create a sort of modern narrative that really helps accentuate what's already existing there with the myth of Persephone. Because I know a lot of people like to write fan fiction about Persephone and Hades, arguing that they're in a happy relationship or something. But it should be really noted in the myth, Persephone's trying to get out of hell, get away from Hades. She doesn't want to be there. Her mother doesn't want to be there. The only person who wants this is Hades. This is an abusive relationship. And anyone who writes fan fiction about these two, they're missing the point. And I don't want to be a buzzkill or anything like that, but that's exactly what's happening. We can't celebrate this type of relationship, in my opinion, and also claim to be, supportive of women who are trying to get out of these types of relationships. And so I think that's something important to consider as you read this poem. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Persephone's first season in hell. A pretty wonderful poem that I'm going to recommend that you go out and read. I'll put a link to it in the description so that you can give it a see. Definitely read it and check out Alison's other work, because she writes pretty quality poems. And a lot of it's worth checking out. If you read this before, you simply want to comment on something I said here, do so below. Let's have a discussion about Persephone or Greek mythology in general. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about this poem if they don't know already. And until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and Greek mythology travels. Farewell.